Good morning, Year 4. I hope you're all doing well. This week we've been learning to justify our interpretations of a text, including responding to characters, information and ideas presented within the text. So poor Tom and Elizabeth, they've been captured and sent to live on the Dunkirk hulk, which is a horrible place. We know it's filthy and we know they were treated very poorly. So let's continue with our story. On their second night in the hulk, Elizabeth gave Tom her ration of bread. Tom looked up and smiled at his friend. "Tar," he said softly as he rubbed the mould off, leaving a dark stain on the crust. Tom had kept a little piece of tin from the orphanage well hidden in his jacket. He took it out and scratched the letters of Elizabeth's name into the wooden bunk. Elizabeth carefully copied what he had written. Here we see Elizabeth once again looking out for Tom's best interest. She gave him her bread. I want you to take a moment and think about this line. "Tar," he said softly as he rubbed the mould off, leaving a dark stain on the crust of bread. What do you think that line there tells us about the conditions on board these hulks? I think that line tells us that the conditions were poor. I think it tells us and reminds us that food was very scarce, and because these convicts were so hungry and went without so often that they were willing to even eat a piece of bread that had a bit of mould on it. It's certainly not something I would be doing. If I had a piece of bread with mould on it, I'd throw it straight in the bin. But these people had no choice. It tells us a lot about the conditions on board that hulk. This line here too, after Tom had scratched Elizabeth's name into the wood, Elizabeth carefully copied what he had written. Take a moment to think about that. Why did she need to copy? Remember, she's older than him. Can you remember why she might think back to earlier on in the text, think about why she might need to have copied what he wrote? Very early on in the text, we learnt that when Tom arrived at the orphanage, that Elizabeth took him under her wing, and it was mentioned that the other children teased him because he could read and write. So this suggests to me that he's trying to teach Elizabeth to read and write, and therefore she had copied what he had written in an attempt to practice her letters. "Yes," she said when she had finished spelling the letters out. ELIZABETH. Tom smiled at her, but then he started to cough and had to lie back on the wooden pillow. If only Tom hadn't come down the alley that day, Elizabeth thought with a sick feeling in her stomach. He told her later that he had seen the baker watching her and tried to warn her, and that was how he got caught as well. We learn more about Tom as a character here. He obviously loves Elizabeth a great deal. Now, I think this because we see him in this sentence here, not only helping her to write her own name, but then to recognise the letters of her name. I also think here where we look at where Tom says that he tried to warn her, he could see that the baker was watching her. He had warned her of the danger of being caught, and by doing so, he risked his own freedom as well. Throughout this text, we've really learned a lot about how much Elizabeth loved and protected Tom, and here we see him giving back to her. We see the very strong bond that they have developed throughout the text. Here we see an image of life on board the hulks for Elizabeth and Tom. This is Elizabeth and Tom down here. The framing of this particular part of the text, we see behind the framing the picture of the hulk, and then we see this, and it's got a little bit of colour to it, though not too much. And then we see within the frame, set down low, is Tom and Elizabeth, and up really high, overlooking them from above, some sort of baton in his hand, looks to me to be a guard. Very dark, looks like nighttime. We see the moon out there. Let's see what happens next. Elizabeth had a terrible feeling of foreboding one dark night as the overseer yelled, "You lot, up on deck and look lively." Tom hid his little piece of tin in his jacket before Elizabeth helped him up the stairs. They took deep breaths of the first fresh air they had breathed for weeks. Then the overseer yelled, "You lot are the lucky ones. You're going to Botany Bay." They left the Dunkirk hulk on that foggy April night in 1787 and boarded the Lady Penrhyn. At sunrise, they would say goodbye to England forever. So Tom and Elizabeth are to be transported to a new colony that was to be set up in an unknown land, now known as Australia. They were to be taken away from their homeland and sent on a journey that would last many, many months to a place they didn't know called Botany Bay. This line here, "You lot are the lucky ones. You're going to Botany Bay." How does this line here make you feel? You are the lucky ones, having all of that taken away from them. Do you think this is the case? Were they really lucky? Your reading task today is all about getting in touch with the emotion of the text, and you can do this in a few ways. We want you to draw or take pictures of an emotion. So you get a chance to express yourself now. You need to choose some emotions that are shown throughout the text. It might be fear when Tom sees the baker watching Elizabeth and he's desperate to stop her from being caught. It might be relief that Elizabeth has been able to stop Tom from having to work in the mill. If you can create this emotion on your own face and add an image of yourself to your work, that's great. If not, just write what the emotion is and explain where you think the emotion was shown in the text. Have a great day, everyone.